And welcome back to Stanny Boy Reviews. I'm your host, Stanley. Thank you so much for taking the time to check out my channel and to talk about your favorite horror films and my favorite horror films. Before we get to today's episode, I want you to take this opportunity to subscribe and follow me on social media platforms. I am on Instagram, I am on Twitter, and I am on TikTok. I have been blessed with this channel so far, you guys. I have had the opportunities to interview Denise Richards and Billy Gallo from Night of the Demons. And now I am just so honored to interview J. Trevor Edmond from some of my favorite horror films like Pumpkinhead 2 and Return of the Living Dead 3 and Lord of Illusions. So without any further ado, I'm gonna have a seat, you have a seat, and let's talk to J. Trevor Edmond.
Yeah. What's up, man?
Let me change it. How you doing? Let me change my background real quick.
No, you're good.
I don't know if it matches the attire.
I think it looks great.
Hold on. So I don't even know if I know how to change the background. All right, let's just go with it.
You know what? I'll take a day at the beach.
We'll do it that way.
How are you today, man?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. I'm really grateful, man. I've only done a couple of these interviews, and each time someone has even bothered to A, read my messages, or B, say yes, I am genuinely shocked because I'm still kind of in awe that we're at a level in technology where people can just reach out to anybody and they can just be asked if they want to be interviewed in general. Foremost, thank you sincerely for this opportunity. It really means a lot.
Well, you're welcome. On the flip side, the fact that we're even talking about this 25, 30 years after the fact, and you're reaching out and curious and have questions is kind of a treat for me. So thank you.
I just rewatched Pumpkinhead 2 and Return of the Living Dead 3 over the last few days just to kind of prepare myself for this interview. And not only did it take me back, but it reminded me of a different time for horror movies. And I think horror movies just used to be so much better, and they were grittier, and they were just a lot more fun 25 years ago. And I just love that I'm getting the chance to talk to somebody that was a part of that era. In your early career, you went by J. Trevor Edmond. Now, I know what the J stands for, but can you tell my viewers what the J stands for?
I was born Jerome Trevor Edmond.
All right.
Jerome was a family name that both my father and grandfather went by. And my mother agreed at the last minute to include that Jerome in there if they could call me by my middle name, which was Trevor. And so I was always Trevor, Trevi, or when I was a little boy, and just went by my middle name all the way through. But she thought it would be a nice nod to the family by including my first initial when I was nothing that had never touched the silver screen or the television set. This was just an early discussion of how I was going to market myself as a young man. And it stuck.
So are you a junior or a third?
We don't have the exact same name. My dad is Jerome Charles.
Okay.
I'm Jerome Trevor. Edmond was actually my grandfather's middle name.
I see.
He dropped his last name at a very young age.
My name is Stanley Edward, and my dad is a senior, so I was named after him. So I was just curious if it was carried on in that way, if it was like generational and like you might be a junior or.
Yeah, no, there's no junior back for that. I didn't get the RDJ status.
Oh, fair enough. When did you decide you wanted to be an actor? Was it something that you always wanted to do?
Yeah, it was early. I had discussed this with my kids now because when I was about their age is when I wanted to be an actor. I vividly remember watching Escape from Witch Mountain around 5 or 6 years old and watching Ike, and I can't remember his last name, but he was the lead boy in that. And I remember thinking, I could do that. And we were Catholic. I was raised Catholic. We had to pray a lot. So I would pray to God, please make me a successful actor, a famous actor. One day I want to be in movies. And it's a bug that never went away. Sometimes that's just the flavor of a week for a young child. Sometimes, they pursue it for a little while and they get discouraged. As I grew from 5 to, let's say, 15, my desire to become a performer and an actor just grew. And I was a huge, huge fan. That's at the end of the day, I was a cinephile. I loved movies. We had a sixplex where I grew up. I'd get dropped off at noon and be picked up at 10 p.m. And I'd go from movie theater to movie theater to movie theater to movie theater and time it out before I went so I could see the whole film over the course of the day or all 6 of the films. And being a fan of film, and horror films especially, really led me to putting a little bit more effort into the auditions for movies like Return of the Living Dead and Pumpkinhead and other horror films I came close to getting, but didn't. I just really wanted to be a part of that genre because I was so fascinated by it as a fan.
What was the audition process for Pumpkinhead 2 like?
In Hollywood, depending on the creative team, you can audition for something 20 times and not end up getting it. You could audition for it 2 or 3 times and suddenly you're starring in a movie. It really depends on the casting director, the director, the producers, and what their creative process looks like and how familiar they are with you and how sure they are of their vision. With Pumpkinhead 2, I think I auditioned only twice. I think I went in for a reading and a callback, and then I got a call that I got the part. And I was shocked because I'd been through so many excruciating, long, drawn out processes. And Return of the Living Dead 3 was one of those. I just kept on going back and kept on going back and being told that I had the role, or that I was now in second place for the role, or, now it's down to me and one other guy. And, they kept on flip-flopping with that, and then mix and matching earlier on too. They had Mindy before they had me. So they would pair us up in the readings to see who had chemistry. There was a much longer process in casting Return of the Living Dead 3 than there was in Pumpkinhead 2. It was pretty easy for Pumpkinhead 2.
Which came first? Because I know they came out around the same time.
I filmed Return in 92, in the fall of 1992. It came out in the fall of 1993, and I filmed Pumpkinhead 2 in the summer of 93.
You said just a few minutes ago that you're a fan of horror movies. So do you have a favorite? It's a loaded question.
Yeah, that's I do. I also sci-fi and horror were like my big things. I loved like the original Terminator, the original Halloween, Highlander, all of those 80s fantasy, sci-fi, horror films. They just all spoke to me. My favorites, like I said, were Halloween. I really liked The Exorcist. I thought that was scary as hell.
Oh, sure. If you were raised Catholic,
to this
I'm
day,
sure that
holds
was.
up. Oh yeah, absolutely. And being a young person, the original Return of the Living Dead. I worked at a movie theater when I was 15 years old, and I got fired because I kept on watching the film instead of cleaning up the hallways with my broom.
Awesome.
The manager would always come in and catch me watching the film. I was a big Return of the Living Dead fan, the original. And when I found out the second one was being shot, and it was being shot in my hometown, I remember driving around with my friends looking for the set to see if we could like talk our way on and watch them, but we never found it.
Where are you from?
Los Angeles, born and raised, just north in the San Fernando Valley. And
right on.
My parents moved us out to Santa Clarita when I was, I guess, in second grade. I was about 7 years old. And that's where both Return of the Living Dead 2 and 3 were shot. So I had just moved out a couple of years before. And then I had to move back in with my parents while I was shooting Return of the Living Dead 3 because it was being shot in my hometown at Santa Clarita Studios.
So how did you hear about Return of the Living Dead 3 then, in that case? Because that's really serendipitous that you really liked the first film and that you had been searching for the sets for the second one being filmed. And then how did it come about for the third film?
There was a lot of serendipity happening for me at that time. But this is just one of a couple of stories I could possibly tell on other shows too. But I was in my early 20s. I was well into my career. I had been working at it since I was about 16, and I started working around 19. I started actually getting roles. So I had an agent, I had a manager, and my manager called me up one day and said, I'm submitting you for this horror movie. Is that something you'd be interested in? I'm like, horror movie? Oh yeah, I'd be interested in that. What is it? And they said, Return of the Living Dead 3. And it's a 3, and it's probably gonna be low budget. Is that something you're interested in? And I said, get me in there. I literally if you need me to pre-read me, whatever I need to do to get in there. I really, really, really wanted in that door. So much so, and I never do this for auditions. I got all my actor friends together that I was in acting class with, and a couple of director friends I knew, and I had everybody rehearse with me. And I made all my friends do the sides. And I had all my friends read it in front of me and I could watch them. And as soon as I watched them, I knew what choices I was going to make when I stepped in. And then a couple of my friends that were directors, they had notes on what those guys should do. And then when I stepped in on what I should do. So when I went in for my first read, I was off book. I knew I had everything memorized. And I could have showed up for set that day. And they were blown away about how prepared I was. So it's like, and I think I did do a pre-read. I didn't go straight to the producers or straight to a callback on this one. So they called me back, and then they called me back again. And then I finally got a chance to meet Brian Yuzna, the director. And then once Brian met me, he brought me back to read with Mindy. And then Brian wanted to sit down with me and talk a lot about the character. He had a vision, and Brian's kind of an introvert. He doesn't talk a lot, but when he does, he's pretty solid about what he's talking about. And he had a very, very clear vision for what he wanted from both Kurt and Julie, and he wanted me to fill those shoes. And I was more than happy to give it my best shot.
Yeah, there's a lot of story to Return of the Living Dead 3. There's a lot more meat, I guess you could say, as opposed to the previous sequel and to a lot more horror movies that were coming out to the time. I mean, it's a love story when it comes down to it.
Yeah, it's Romeo and Juliet, you know.
It really is.
I always say Romeo and Juliet go to hell. That's what drew me to it. You know, it wasn't just that it was Return of the Living Dead 3, but I loved the love story part of that was woven into the storyline. I just thought that was something I could really sink my teeth into. I was able to draw a lot from my own relationships at the time and my own teenage angst, and put that all into Kurt, the character. And it was it was just so much fun to actually get tapped on the shoulder for that, and be able to step on that set and then ultimately watch that film. It was a super huge honor for me.
There's a lot of character development there, as opposed to Pumpkinhead 2, where you play a completely opposite character. That's a completely different character turn. You play someone who's
It is
hard-headed, stubborn asshole, for lack of better terms.
We're gonna have to go tell my dad, Danny.
She's right. You do what you want, Danny. We're gonna go to the sheriff.
The hell you are!
Let's get out of here. Nobody's going anywhere in close.
Hey, what the fuck are you doing, man?
Get on the couch now.
Put the gun down! Put the gun down! Get on the couch now!
And had you seen the previous Pumpkinhead?
I was not a fan of the original Pumpkinhead. As a movie critic and geek, I did not like that movie. I thought, and I wanted to like that movie. I liked all the things that you know, how they marketed it with Stan Winston and being a Terminator fan, and you know, some of the actors that were in it, but I just didn't particularly care for the film. When I got Pumpkinhead 2, I wasn't nearly as excited as I was for Return of the Living Dead 3, but I was, when I found out the cast of Pumpkinhead 2, and then I was going to star in it specifically with Amy Dolenz, who I had a crush on for years. Yeah. I was super stoked, and I ended up becoming friends with a lot of those guys, and it was a really fun shoot. It was brief though, you know. We shot it really quick. It was an odd shoot. It didn't have it had just a different feel to it than Return of the Living Dead did. It just felt more almost like I was shooting like a student film, as compared to a lot of the other films that I had done.
Interesting. I'm a big fan of early 90s direct-to-video horror, so obviously I really like Amy Dolenz myself. Are you still in touch with her?
You know, I haven't talked to Amy in probably 20 years, but we were very close back then. We were very, very good friends, and actually ended up dating for a little bit after the film, but she was way too good for me. And I say that in all the best ways.
That's so funny.
She was an awesome girl. Yeah. Just as sweet as she is on screen, if not sweeter.
I work at a restaurant, and I take care of her dad so much. Like, he's one of my regular customers, and it's the funniest thing.
Mickey and her are very close, like very close.
Like I always want to be like, yo, I wanna talk to your daughter, but like I never have the nerve to
Be
be
careful.
like, I would never do it. I actually met Mickey Dolenz once during a production of Aida like 20 years ago when I was on a student trip to New York with like a drama club. And it was so funny to meet him again now as like a server at a restaurant. It's the most ironic thing. But going back to Pumpkinhead, I actually prefer Pumpkinhead 2 over Pumpkinhead. I think Pumpkinhead 2 is so much more fun. And it's got better kills, it's got better gags, for me, it's a better story. And I might get a little bit of flack for saying that, but.
My favorite film when I was a kid was Escape from New York.
Sure.
And there's one of the guys, he's one of the hicks in the town that gets killed. I was super excited to like pick his brain on it. I was such a huge fan of that film. But he's one of those cool kills that you're talking about, you know.
Joe Unger.
I remember him talking about there. You don't know what you're messing with that old witch down in that holler.
Oh, sure. You said that one was filmed in Santa Clarita too?
It was filmed out in one of the canyons. There was this old movie ranch off of the 14 freeway, just past Placerita Canyon. And I can't remember the name of the ranch, but every time I see a movie, I can tell it's that ranch.
Right.
And it's famous for being a movie set. The movie Motel Hell in the 80s, that was shot there too. If you go look at that house, that was me and the judge's house, you can see in the background.
Oh, is it still there?
From like, I have no idea. I haven't been there since I shot the movie. But I've seen a lot of different things come out between now and then. I'm like, I know that set.
Yeah, I gotta check it. I'm a location guy. I like to check that stuff out.
Yeah.
You mentioned Brian Yuzna, who's super famous in the horror world. I mean, he's made movies like Bride of Reanimator and Society, and I mean, obviously, Return of the Living Dead 3. Were you familiar with his work prior to booking this, and was it a good experience working with him?
They read me for Society, so he was familiar with me. And I actually was one of the finalists. It went for the role that ultimately went to Billy Warlock.
Do you regret not booking that one?
You know, I'm happy I got Return of the Living Dead 3. I can't say I regret it. There was other roles that I wanted more than that one that I didn't get, that I came really, really close on. That at the time I was not livid. I was just devastated about losing. Society was like Return of the Living Dead 3. It was a low budget horror film that at the time I had no idea was going to go down in folklore as like one of the, these period pieces that will live in infamy.
It's a trip.
Yeah, it's a total trip. But so is Bride of the Reanimator. It's a trip too.
Absolutely.
All those films are kind of crazy. As is The Dentist. Working with Brian, I just did the one film with him. I remember bringing up that I had met him in the Society auditions, and he hadn't remembered. And this is right down to the very end. I said, we've gone down this path before, and I hope you pick me this time. He's like, what are you talking about? He goes, I was right down at the very end there at Society. He goes, oh my God, that's right. That was you. I guess I wasn't that memorable because he didn't even know until I mentioned it to him.
Oh, that's funny. You meet a really grisly demise in Pumpkinhead 2. I mean, you get your head ripped off, and
I have that head, by the way.
No, stop. You actually have the prop head.
Yeah, Greg Nicoretto, who was part of K&B at the time, and he's a big creative part of the team on Walking Dead.
Sure, I serve him a lot too in my restaurant.
He was the special effects supervisor on Pumpkinhead 2, and at the very end, after they threw it on the ground and they said that's a take and we're moving on. I said, can I have it? And he goes, sure, why not? I have it to this day. And I dressed up as Jason a couple of times on Halloween and carried my head with me with a knife.
That's hilarious.
And it freaked everybody out because it still looks kind of gross.
Oh, I can imagine so.
Yeah.
I mean, I was
doesn't look like me anymore.
Like, I mean, that's funny. I was gonna ask what it was like working with these guys and what it was like working with the special effects team and like with Steve Johnson on Return of the Living Dead 3. If you actually met Steve Johnson, because I know that he's like kind of notorious for like being a part of these special effects teams on these lower budget movies, but not really appearing on the sets.
With Steve, actually, well, I don't know how I got to know him so well, but I went and hung out with him and his girlfriend at his house and afterwards, and we got pretty close for a little while. I think it was because he was very much a part of Mindy being put together. That was a really big project for them. And it took a long time, especially the first time. It took the better part of the day to get everything on. And so I would sit there and chat with those guys because I was fascinated as a horror film fan, and they were applying all the prosthetics and all the different things. You know, I was watching everything they did, and hanging out with Mindy and just talking. And I got to know Steve really well. He was a super cool guy. It's been a long time since I've seen him or talked to him. I'm not really in touch with a lot of those guys now, but back then, he was present from what I recall, and super nice and funny. He kind of had an actor's personality. He was very extroverted, had a lot of a lot of just good stories, and I just remember him being very dynamic.
I met him recently at Monsterpalooza a couple months back, and I was wearing a t-shirt that was promoting my channel, and I had approached him and told him I really liked the Night of the Demons movie and that it was one of my favorite films and I love the special effects work. And he called me a sucker because I wasn't wearing a Night of the Demons t-shirt, and then offered a picture and offered me a cigarette. He was really pleasant. He was really funny.
Yeah, that sounds like Steve.
Yeah, he's a really nice guy. The actors that I have interviewed in the past said that they never watch their work. Are you one of these actors who ever revisit the movies that they've been in? Do you ever watch your movies? And if so, what are the experiences like?
I am extremely visual. I don't just watch the movie. I watch the movie as it's being made, to the director's chagrin. So when they're shooting each shot, I make a beeline to go toward the monitor and watch the replay each time. Now, all the creative team, they're making sure, the shot and the lighting and, all the artistic stuff and that goes into filmmaking is correct. Me as an actor, I have to watch to see how I'm doing as I'm doing it. And that was something that I particularly like to do. And the directors hate it. They want you to be organic. They don't want you to be self-conscious. They want you to be just in the moment there in front of the camera. And I had to just pull teeth to get back of that monitor as I'm shooting to see what I'm doing. And getting that visual cue really worked for me. And directors had a hard time, Brian especially, with my process. But we came to an understanding eventually that, it's just something that worked for me. But it was hard for him. He had to shoo me away a bunch at the beginning. And I'd be all like, no, you got to let me see what I'm doing. I really want to see it. But to go watch the film, to answer your question at the very end, it's kind of surreal at first. I remember that very first time I was at the premiere of Return of the Living Dead 3, and I had never seen, my name come up as the starring character. It was my first time seeing that, and it's something I had always wanted and I had visualized. There was this huge sense of satisfaction, having my parents there and having all my friends there and a full audience and all these fans and people coming up for me and asking for pictures and autographs at the end. And, the whole experience, whether it be interacting with the fans or whether it be watching the actual film, it's surreal. I just was extremely grateful. To this day, I'm grateful that I had the experience. And it's nostalgic when people still bring it up, like yourself. You're coming in, you're a fan of the films, and you watched them recently. They're fresh in your mind. And
these were like my go-to rentals of like Hollywood Video when I was a kid. Like I got specifically my mom signed me up for a Blockbuster card when I was 9 years old, and Pumpkinhead 2, the Return of the Living Dead movies, and Lord of Illusions were the top movies that I would get all the time. And the Blockbuster clerks hated me because they would be, would you get something else? Rent a different movie. There are more movies out there. And I'm like, no, these are the ones.
That was me.
Yeah, see, you understand.
That was me when I was 14. I worked in the video store, and I got all those films too. And that wasn't the films I was in, but the films similar to that. I was drawn to all those, and I'd watch them over and over again. It drove my parents crazy.
And that's all the movies I have. I don't consider them terrible, but some people might not consider them up to par with what might be wonderfully rated horror movies. You know what I mean? But I have a huge soft spot, and they're nostalgic factor.
Now they're like a period piece. Exactly. It so identifies the 90s. Straight to video or low budget horror film.
Exactly.
It was it did have a grit to it, and they don't, they tried to make Return of the Living Dead 4 and 5, and I guess they did in Romania. I haven't seen either one of the films.
I haven't either. I
But
can't bring myself to do it.
everybody says that they're pretty hard to watch. I don't see this kind of movie being made anymore, which surprises me because they're not that hard to make, and there's so many young kids out there that can make movies with their iPhone basically these days and edit them together. If you know anything about filmmaking, there's got to be another M. Night Shyamalan out there that's making his own little horror film that can do it as well as we did it.
Yeah,
I'm sure it's just a matter of time.
What was it like working with Clive Barker when you did Lord of Illusions?
I'd known about Clive for a long time, and he was sort of like this Edgar Allan Poe figure in my mind. He was this dark magician behind the camera. And when you meet Clive is like just the nicest, like bubbly, bright guy. And so it was a little surreal again to be picked by Clive to be in the film. He matched me up with Barry, who I played. Barry Del Sherman was playing the older version of my character, Butterfield. And I had just like been out camping for like a month or something. I came in with a big beard, my hair was all long, and Clive's like, "What is this?" And I'm all like, "I've just been out for a little bit." And he's like, "Well, get cleaned up." And so they took me in and they cleaned me up, but they bleached my eyebrows and they gave me a blue eye, and then they bleached all the hair on my legs, and they tried to put me in a jockstrap. And I was all like, to wear instead of the Daisy Dukes you see me wearing. And I'm all like, I'm sorry, I just can't do the jockstrap. And like, I don't mean to interrupt the creative process here, but that's just going a little too far.
Very Clive Barker.
And yeah, and I was all like, okay, I won that one too. I don't think he was too happy about it, but we were just feeling the role out. We were trying to see how far he could push it. And like I said, we ended up going with the Daisy Dukes, and I had to play this extremely androgynous character. Again, very different from Kurt or Danny. This kid was like a little boy toy for this cult leader, and he was very clearly not right in so many ways. And neither was the film.
You don't like him, do you? He wants your magic.
It was what I was attracting. Apparently, I was drawn to and attracted to the macabre. That's how it went down for me at that time. I just got picked for those roles. I didn't intend to appear in a lot of horror films. I just liked them, and maybe I tried a little harder and was a little more focused in those auditions than I was for some other movies that turned out household names. That I could have, very easily been in those also, but I might not have been quite as focused because I wasn't as much of a fan of the material.
The characters you ended up playing, though, ended up being like pretty diverse.
I was going for that then. I saw myself, I look back, I kind of think of it as funny now, but I saw myself as this serious actor, and because when you're acting all the time, even though you're only seeing me in a few films. I'm acting, 5, 6, 7 days a week in real life, and whether it be in my theater group or in a play that I'm producing, or in all the auditions my agents are sending me on, I'm always acting. I'm always focused on it. It was my life for the better part of 2 decades, and I took it very, very seriously. So when I thought of myself, I was trying to think of myself as like this really diverse actor, like Dustin Hoffman or Al Pacino or Sean Penn, and I'm really like trying my best to bring me to that kind of talent. They were all much better and much more talented than I was, but I was giving it my best shot at the time. So if you see me playing all these different characters, I knew I wasn't Clint Eastwood. I wasn't going to come in and be me every time. I was going to like try and fill the skin of some character. And I kind of saw myself more as a character actor than a leading man. But if I got a Kurt from Return of the Living Dead 3 along the way, great. I was happy to take it.
Well, man, this is my last question. You've moved on from acting and you do real estate now, but do you miss it? Do you miss acting? Would you consider acting again?
So this is probably the question I get asked the most. And I'm going to give you the answer. My standard answer on this is that I was absolutely in love with acting. I was in love with the lifestyle and the art, everything about it. It was my everything. It was the center of my world. I fell out of love with it along the way. It took 20 years for that to happen, but I fell out of love with it. And it was a very painful process for me to leave Hollywood and to leave the craft behind and the lifestyle behind, because there was so much left that I wanted to do that I didn't accomplish, but I had to. It was detrimental to myself, me, and the people that love me, for so many different reasons. And I needed to grow into another version of myself.
Right.
So when you ask, do I miss it? It's like missing an ex. Yeah, you're always going to have a love for that person, but it's so behind you at this point, and it's behind me. And so I think back on it fondly. I will always have a love for it. Do I miss it? I miss some of it. I miss the show. The business part of it can be a little hard, and the town itself of Hollywood is as an underbelly, a dark underbelly that I don't miss at all. It just kind of came along with the territory, and that's why a lot of lifers don't live in Hollywood. It's like Las Vegas. You can only do it for a weekend.
Sure.
Nobody goes to Las Vegas because does a 2-week vacation because it'll kill them. And that's kind of like the same thing in Hollywood. You can't really expose yourself too much to it because it can be a lot. There's a lot of pitfalls that you can get caught into. So I know this is a really wordy answer to your question, but I think the question deserves an appropriate response, and that is that no, I don't miss it anymore. I don't wish I could be in front of the camera anymore, even have a hard time doing these kinds of interviews, or being in front of a camera at all because of that experience. I kind of left that there, but I'm happy to do them when they're asked of me, but I still struggle with it. I still struggle with that particular time and how the me now conjoins with the me then. It feels like a different lifetime.
Touche, man. Thank you for the movies that you made, and thank you for making such an impact on my childhood and my love for horror.
Hey, that's it. Look, I did everything I did for me at the time, but what means something to me now is that there's someone like you out there, and I imagine there's a few more of people that will appreciate what we did and that you like it. You're still interested. You're going to keep me alive for a lot longer probably than I'm alive for.
I love it.
It's a record at the end of the day, right? My kids are going to watch all this stuff one day, and their kids, and life's short, but these movies last forever. So I'm glad we did something that entertains people and that you're resonating with.
That's perfect. Well, on that note, take care of yourself,
right,
man. Thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely. Thanks for being a fan.
Hey, take care of yourself.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
No, the pleasure's all mine.